everyone, today is Wednesday, the 29th of December, Eastern Time. This is the 11th issue of Bronco's Review. The Chinese version was released on the 18th of December, 2021, and the English version will be released today. There may be many grammatical errors and name pronunciation problems, but I really appreciate your patience. First, US President Biden announced in August that the Global Democracy Summit will be held from the 9th of December to 10th. The summit invited about 110 leaders of countries and regions, non-governmental organizations, etc. Taiwan was invited to participate, but countries such as China and Russia were excluded. The United States is ready to unite democracies against the CCP. The Xi group was unexpectedly slapped in the face by Biden, but then the reaction of the Xi group left us stunned. On the 13th of October, Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, suddenly affirmed the value of democracy at a high-profile meeting of the Central People's Congress, and put forward the criteria for judging democracy. China has achieved the unity of whole process democracy and fruitful democracy, procedural democracy and substantive democracy, direct democracy and indirect democracy, and people's democracy in the will of the state. It is a democracy with full coverage of the entire chain and the most extensive, true and effective socialism democracy. Xi Jinping's speech is probably another absurd remark concocted by Wang Huning, a fake PhD. It is clearly an attempt to regain the right to speak in democracy. It is said that democracy is to be defined by the Chinese people. Does the CCP dare to let the Chinese people define it? Democracy and autocracy have clear definitions and criteria in the context of modern political science. China's political system is exactly in line with the universally recognized autocracy standards. If CCP want to say that a deer is a horse, the Chinese people may have to accept it, but most Chinese people will not accept it in their hearts. Yes, people from other countries in the world will never accept it. 11's words are obviously schizophrenic. Just let the Chinese people define democracy. What do you plan to do? Have a referendum? Ask whether every Chinese citizen needs universal democratic rights, that is, the right to vote and be elected, the right to assemble and process, the right to form political parties, and the right to freedom of press and speech. Supervise government power. Don't the Chinese people want the basic rights of citizens of these democracies? In what way have why? Oh, you ask the Chinese people. However, the comments made by overseas Chinese netizens caused Xi Jinping's full-course democracy to be questioned and ridiculed overseas first. Netizen 1. I only ask one question. If people are not satisfied with Xi Jinping, what can people do with him? Netizen 2. Those who don't agree are class enemies, and foreign anti-China forces are not the people. Netizen 3. The word people is the greatest invention of our party. It is not a resident, not a citizen, but the people. The party says you are the people, so you are the people. Netizen 4. There are two kinds of democracy, one of which is what he called democracy, which is to make decisions on behalf of the people, and the people cannot make their own decisions. Netizen 5. CCP-style democracy. The people will always be the people, and the CCP's dignitaries are the masters. Netizen 7. Democracy is a term used exclusively by the CCP, and most people will be arrested if they say it. It fully embodies the connotation of CCP democracy. A few days ago, the State Council Information Office of China issued the Democracy in China White Paper, which called China's democracy people's democracy in the whole process. As early as 2019, Xi Jinping proposed full process democracy, and he added the word people to this year's 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. At the press conference of the 6th plenary session of the 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China last month, the party's mouthpiece stated that the whole process of people's democracy is high in democracy and good in democracy, and it is well received by the Chinese people. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Li Yaqing said in a recent symposium that China is a well-deserved democracy, and the Chinese people fully enjoy the right to know, express, and supervise. However, just the day before the publication of the White Paper, Chongqing City was holding elections for deputies to district and county people's congresses. Tang Jingzhao, one of the independent candidates, who was not a member of the Communist Party, submitted an application form for candidate qualifications in November and applied for it. Until the 3rd of December, she suddenly found out that the election was already in progress. She immediately rushed to the polling station to ask about the situation. As a result, she was driven out of the polling station by a group of police on the grounds that they interfered with the election. The White Paper describes whole process democracy as the unity of process democracy and outcome democracy, procedural democracy and substantive democracy, or direct democracy and indirect democracy. This is playing a democratic word game. Most Chinese people will not, like Tang Jingzhao, really believe that China's elections are equal, and the people's right to vote and to be elected are fully protected as stated in the white paper, and then register for elections, wanting to what? Aim the right to know, right of expression. Because everyone is well aware that the most important thing in the entire white paper is only one sentence. The leadership of the Chinese Communist Party is the fundamental guarantee for China's development of people's democracy throughout the entire process. The meaning of this sentence is similar to the meaning of the people's democratic dictatorship. If it is not controlled by the CCP, it is not true democracy. It is estimated that only the brain-disabled people in China will believe it. After being driven out of the polling station by the socialist police, Tang Jingzhao maintained her final confidence in full process democracy. She appealed to neighbors in the neighborhood to vote in various ways. Everyone went to the polling station, but they were asked to vote to specific 4 candidates by the staff. Secret vote? That is Western democracy. And the whole process of democracy does not require secret voting. Indeed, no paragraph in the entire white paper mentions secret voting. Is China's full process democracy democracy after all? There is no freedom of assembly and association and speech, no independent media and judiciary, but there are black box administrative procedures, and a political system led by the Communist Party's dictatorship. Is it democracy? Chen Danping said that whether the CCP is democratic or dictatorship is not worth discussing at all. This is common sense, and it is as easy as distinguishing food from dung. But the white paper is not written for any democratic theory expert to argue. It is propaganda to the Chinese people, just like Nazi propaganda. Tell the Chinese that the good things of the world outside the wall are also inside the wall, and they have been under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Under the leadership of the Party Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core, the Chinese government has achieved world-renowned achievements in its comprehensive democratic construction. In the white paper, the Western democracy model of one person, one vote, party competition has been criticized, because that is not the only standard of democracy. Whether there is a single standard for democracy may be a phantom question. However, dissatisfaction with parliamentary democracy has always been the subject of passionate or calm introspection by Western intellectuals. The white paper stated that Chinese democracy is good or not depends on whether the people are satisfied, and pointed out that data shows that the Chinese people's satisfaction with the Chinese government remains above 90% every year. This data itself is a lie, but it means that the current Chinese people have completely lost their freedom of speech. I can immediately expose the lies of the Xi Jinping clique. In 2012, the CCP's Global Times conducted the only public opinion survey. 63% of people want to implement Western-style democracy. I believe the Globe. L Times cannot tell the truth. At least 90% of people in China want democracy. In all fairness, China's political system does have a certain degree of resilience. After all, Deng Xiaoping's reform and opening up has prolonged the CCP's lifespan by at least several decades. However, this resilience is accompanied by a high degree of vulnerability, similar to Peng Shui scandals. In liberal democracies, the media will pay attention for a week at most. But for China's whole process, people's democracy, it is almost a crisis of legitimacy. Wang Hu's observations in the experience of China's rise and the challenges it faces are quite precise. The most critical issue is that this type of official civilian contradiction is often raised to the height of a legitimacy crisis for discussion. On the other hand, in some other countries, even with the decline of national capabilities, the government's inaction, the economic downturn, and the inability to implement social policies, there is no systemic political crisis. This issue is closely related to democracy as a resource of political legitimacy. This white paper expounding the whole process of people's democracy, the emotions and atmosphere revealed in it are indeed different from the Western democracy referred to in it. Translated into the vernacular, the whole process of democracy is under the leadership of the CCP. Under the premise that the candidates are arranged and designated by the CCP, the voting process is completed in the voting procedure designated by the CCP. The candidates designated by the CCP are 100% elected and the voters are 100% cooperative. Even without the cooperation of the voters, it is possible to complete the vote counting directly in accordance with the instructions of the leader. As for saying that 90% of Chinese people are in favor of full democracy, I can only say one thing: isn't it more powerful to brag about 100%? Why don't you say it? This shows that only 10% of the CCP's face is human. After all, nearly 1/5 of the world's population can rarely express their will without being endorsed by the Communist Party. As long as the Chinese are allowed to vote once a time, only once, to prove that the people agree or disagree with the whole process of democracy, the CCP does not dare, which shows how much they fear democracy. Even if the CCP itself said 1,000 times that it is a whole process democracy, the Chinese would not believe it. Take a look at the comments on the People's Daily. The People's Daily has shown that 90% of the Chinese people disagree with the whole process of democracy. Netizen 1. It's enough. Netizen 2. Whether a country is democratic or not should be judged by the people of the country, not by a few outsiders. Does this mean that the CCP is a minority outside the people? Netizen 3. I can be democratic, but you cannot be democratic. Netizen 4. Can you criticize other countries for fake democracy after the universal election? Netizen 5. Netizens are not easy to be deceived. You overturned your car again. Everyone is not a fool. Every day you say that the United States is bad. As a result, the powerful and the rich have all gone to the United States. Netizen 7. Let's stop criticizing American democracy. Since you decided not to take the path of democracy, then stop criticizing others. It's ridiculous. Netizen 9. Seriously, People's Daily is not suitable for publishing news that is too specific. Netizen 10. The People's Daily, which reported that the yield per reached 10,000 kilograms, is the most democratic, haha. Today, the CCP dare to say that it is democratic in the whole process, which is also a good thing. At least it shows that these people also know that democracy is the general trend, and the concept of democracy has been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. They can only talk nonsense on the definition of democracy, which shows that they are beginning to fear, and their fear is the beginning of destruction. They can no longer treat the Chinese as leeks and harvest again and again. In the near future, the Chinese people will definitely decide for themselves whether they want the CCP's full process democracy or a democracy in which everyone has the right to vote. The Chinese will no longer allow the Communist Party to help them decide. Apart from the Communist Party, no one should think that the Chinese people are not worthy of such a decision. And on YouTube, the water army of CCP adopted a consistent method of fraud this time, such as one water army named Insight into the World issued 110 heads of state withdrew on the spot. The status of China and the United States were all reversed overnight, Biden screamed, and the United States can no longer laugh. Another water army named Look at the Information quickly issued refusal to enter China, cancel visit to China. China's trick is too ruthless. The US allies collectively announced that they would withdraw from the Democracy Summit and change their participation in the Beijing Winter Olympics. US humiliating response, global laughter, waiting for sensational headlines to spread fake news. This blatant fraud is the CCP's consistent methods, and the traffic is faked, and the traffic is obtained by tampering with data by robot accounts or hackers. All in all, the reaction of the Shia's gang to the Democracy Summit, we can only say that we have seen shameless people, but we have never seen such shameless people as the CCP. Next, let's talk about the clear warning from the former Japanese Prime Minister to the CCP and Xi Jinping. Not long ago, former Japanese Prime Minister Abe calmly slapped Xi Jinping. Chinese Assistant Foreign Minister Hu Chunying urgently met with the Japanese ambassador to China Tirisho on the evening of the 1st of December, and lodged solemn representations regarding the wrong remarks concerning China made by the former Japanese Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe. But in the Chinese media, they dare not say publicly what Shinzo Abe said. Earlier that day, Shinzo Abe said when attending the Taiwan think tank forum meeting through a video connection, if something happens in Taiwan, it is equivalent to something wrong with Japan. And it is also equivalent to something wrong with the Japan-US alliance. He warned Beijing not to make a misjudgment and said if China attacks Taiwan, Japan and the United States will never stand idly by. And such a move will also cause great harm to China's own economy.
台湾への武力侵攻は地理的、空間的に必ず日本の国土に対する重大な危険を引き起こさずにはいません。台湾有事、それは日本有事です。すなわち日米同盟の有事でもあります。この点の認識を北京の人々は、とりわけ習近平主席は断じて見誤るべきではありません。強い台湾、伸びる台湾、自由で人々に人権を保障する台湾は日本の利益であります。世界全体の利益でもあるからであります。
Hu Chunying said in a meeting with Japanese ambassador to China Tirisho on Wednesday night that Shinzo Abe's extremely wrong remarks, grossly interfering in China's internal affairs, openly provoking China's sovereignty, and brazenly supporting Taiwan's independence forces, China firmly opposes this. She also mentioned that Japan had launched a war of aggression against China in history, and has committed heinous crimes against the Chinese people and has no right to make irresponsible remarks on the Taiwan issue. Prior to this, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin had also responded to Shinzo Abe's remarks at a regular press conference on Wednesday. He pointed out that Japan had colonized Taiwan for half a century and committed untold crimes. He also warned that no one should underestimate the Chinese people's determination, and strong ability to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity, nor retake the old path of militarism. On Thursday, Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno expressed his views on China's meeting with the Japanese ambassador to China. He said that the Japanese side disagrees with China's approach because Shinzo Abe is no longer a government official, so the Japanese government is inconvenient to comment on his remarks. When meeting with Hu Chunying, Ambassador Tirisho made it very clear that China must understand that there are such views in Japan, and Japan cannot accept China's unilateral views on such issues. Bronco believes that compared with Japanese militarism, the Chinese Communist Party has brought more disasters to China than 10,000 times that of Japanese militarism, and the CCP's crimes are truly innumerable, and the biggest crime of Japanese militarism against China is to create great opportunities for the CCP to steal power. Japan should do its part to eliminate the CCP and maintain stability in Asia. On the 1st of December, Shinzo Abe delivered a keynote speech on Japan-Taiwan relations in the new era at the National Policy Research Institute of Taiwan via video, stating that the future environment facing Japan and Taiwan is full of tensions and challenges. The armed encroachment on Taiwan is a major danger to Japan's territory, whether geographically or spatially, and Japan cannot tolerate this situation. Something has happened in Taiwan is equivalent to something has happened in Japan, and it can also be said that something has happened in the Japan-US alliance. Shinzo Abe also emphasized that Beijing's leadership must not misjudge this recognition. Taking military adventures is tantamount to taking the road to economic suicide. This is the first time that a Japanese politician has stated that it will break through the One China principle set by China in the past 50 years since the restoration of diplomatic relations between China and Japan. It clearly stated that the Japanese action of intervention in the Taiwan Strait is more direct than the United States. Abe's speech immediately attracted global attention. On the evening of the 4th of December, during an interview with an internet program, Shinzo Abe said that as a member of the Japanese parliament, it is an honor to receive attention. It is an honor to speak clearly to the other party. Is the only way to avoid conflict. I will continue. Say what should be said. Some experts and scholars in mainland China have launched a large-scale criticism of Shinzo Abe, saying that his remarks on the Taiwan issue are nonsense, with the purpose of reaping his own political dividends and disrupting Kishida's diplomacy. On the evening of the 4th of December, during an interview with an internet program, Shinzo Abe said that as a member of the Japanese parliament, it is an honor to receive attention. Speak clearly to the other party. Is the only way to avoid conflict. I will continue. Say what should be said. Some experts and scholars in mainland China have launched a large-scale criticism of Shinzo Abe, saying that his remarks on the Taiwan issue are nonsense, with the purpose of reaping his own political dividends and disrupting Kishida's diplomacy. This time, Shinzo Abe's remarks are extraordinary, and a major impact on Sino-Japanese relations and the major test of the settlement of the Taiwan issue are even more extraordinary. In essence, this is also the first step in a trilogy of Japan's thorough showdown to China on the Taiwan issue. That is to say, let Shinzo Abe use the Japan-Taiwan meeting to express clearly and act as a pioneer, showing Japan's trump card on the Taiwan issue to China. Something happened in Taiwan equals something happened in Japan, that is, something happened in the Japan-US alliance to equal future in Beijing's political confrontation and countermeasures, and when Beijing may further strengthen its military pressure on Taiwan, this too equals was included in the outline of Japan's security strategy and defense plan, making it clear that it has become a critical situation related to Japan's survival crisis. Lay a legal foundation for military participation in the Taiwan Strait issues. The third step is to include this under the principle of equivalence within the framework of the Japan-US Security 2+2 New Joint Statement and even the Japan-US-India-Australia 4-sided mechanism, thereby adopting a stronger and tougher posture. Prevent mainland ND China from using force against Taiwan. According to relevant Japanese sources disclosed to Asia Weekly, this time Shinzo Abe clearly stated that the two equates in Taiwan's affairs are not accidental. There are clever calculations of Japanese politics behind it, and there is also intelligence that hints at the dangerous urgency of sudden changes in the situation in the Taiwan Strait. Shinzo Abe is Japan's most appropriate pioneer to challenge China to intervene in the Taiwan Strait. He is also an iconic politician with high-ranking non-government officials whose actual influence is much higher than that of government officials. As the longest ruling prime minister in Japan's constitutional history, Shinzo Abe's political influence is beyond doubt. Secondly, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party's largest faction, the Shinzo Abe faction, currently has 95 senators and congressmen. Abe's words and deeds naturally have a decisive influence on the Liberal Democratic Party's policies. At the same time, Abe is also the most pro-Taiwan representative in Japanese political family history. As a result, Shinzo Abe's two equivalence theory on the Taiwan issue, published by both public and private, can maximize the political effect. This time, Shinzo Abe clearly put forward the two equality theory at a seminar sponsored by the National Policy Research Institute of Taiwan, but this is not only Abe's personal opinion, nor is it what the outside world claims is to contain and put pressure on the Kishida cabinet. On the contrary, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida should have a tacit understanding of Shinzo Abe's public speech, and Abe's two equivalence theory is also the clear direction of Kishida's new cabinet on cross-strait policy. It is precisely because of this that Taiwan's National Policy Research Institute's Shinzo Abe's speech has been delayed from preparations scheduled for August this year to November's finalization. What is waiting for is that after the Kishida House of Representatives election victory, it will be able to stabilize long-term governance and implement a clear cross-strait strategy. On the 17th of November, Kishida personally went to the House of Representatives in Shinzo Abe's office. Kishida said he exchanged views with Shinzo Abe on Japan's diplomatic and economic issues, and asked Shinzo Abe to visit Malaysia as the Prime Minister's special envoy. On the third day after the announcement, Shinzo Abe told the media that Kishida Fumio's diplomatic stance seems to be moderate, but in fact it is very firm and worth looking forward to. On the 6th of December, Shinzo Abe said at a gathering of factions under his leadership, 95 of us, senators and congressmen, must unite and resolutely support the Kishida government. This is our responsibility. It can be seen that Shinzo Abe is charging. In the past, there is a strong political backing of Kishida behind it, cooperating with the political forces of the Shinzo Abe faction. Japan urges China to continue the dialogue. Things in Taiwan are the same as things in Japan, that is, things in the Japan-US alliance have become Japan's clear policy on cross-strait policies. Shinzo Abe said, "What should be said is still to be said." And Kishida, in his policy speech at the Congress convened on the 6th of December said, "Establishing a stable relationship with China is very important for China and Japan, the region and the international community. In a country that shares universal values, during the cooperation, Japan will stick to its propositions against China that urge China to take responsible actions while continuing dialogue to jointly tackle many issues." Kishida said that he will work hard to revise the national security strategy, the outline of the defense plan, and the mid-term National Defense Force Development Plan, boldly respond to the challenges of the new era, such as strengthening Japan's defense capabilities, including maritime security capabilities and anti-missile capabilities, and economic security. It is worth noting that this year's Defense White Paper for the first time stated and emphasized that the stability of the Taiwan situation is critical to Japan's security. So will the Taiwan Incident Equivalent Theory be written directly in next year's Defense White Paper? What is more noteworthy is that during the Japan-US Security Ministers and Defense Ministers 2+2 talks in March this year, the Japan-US joint statement clearly involved the Taiwan Strait issue, emphasizing the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait for the first time. In the new round of Japan-US 2+2 talks to be held at the beginning of next year, will Taiwan's issue of equivalence become a joint guarantee for the new Japan-US alliance? Following Shinzo Abe, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken also confided that China's armed invasion of Taiwan may cause disastrous consequences. The situation in the Taiwan Strait is perilous, and Japan, which is considered the least likely to send troops to aid Taiwan, has turned around and became the vanguard of the most active defense of Taiwan to prevent the Chinese Communist SS from attacking Taiwan by force. With the Japan-US military alliance at the core, the combined military forces of the United States, Japan and India, Australia, and the United Kingdom and France are trying to contain China, which has also put Japan at the forefront of responding to things in Taiwan. The new political game between China and Japan surrounding things in Taiwan, the trilogy just started. The ups and downs of the plot will not only impact the reality, but will have a more profound impact on the future Sino-Japanese relations. In Shinzo Abe's speech, perhaps because he was worried that Xi Jinping's elementary school education level would not be understood, he also pointed out specifically that, especially for President Xi Jinping, If there is something to do with Taiwan, it is something that is happening to Japan, that something is happening to the Japan-US alliance. This sentence should not be misunderstood. Just tell Xi Jinping so bluntly that this like a big slap in the face of Xi Jinping, who has been making gods for himself in China. I want to give Shinzo Abe and Japan a thumbs up. This is what the leaders of big countries should say, and this is what big countries that dare to take responsibility and maintain regional peace and stability should do. A lesson for the stupid CCP who dreams every day. However, it is rare that the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's unequivocal remarks are rare. The Japanese and the Japanese government's speeches have always been relatively tactful, and Shinzo Abe's speeches are clearly expressed word by word, and there is no room for misunderstanding by the CCP. This slap in the face slapped Eleven's group silly. After the Japanese ambassador was summoned, the Japanese ambassador also verbally expressed that this is what ordinary Japanese people meant. There is no misunderstanding. It is a slap in the face of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Taiwan is now the place where Chinese culture is inherited. Japan is a country that regards the Analect as a textbook that middle school students must memorize. Chinese cultural traditions are guarded by countries with common values. The communism, a rubbish theory from the West, should get out of China. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment below. Please click like and subscribe.